as long as humanity exists almost, there has been leather around.
Welcome to the episode 3 of Leathertainment podcast on the go. Today we're gonna go a little bit different direction. We've been talking about what's happening in the industry in the market today, but we're gonna go back a couple thousand years maybe to look at the legacy of leather. And I think when we were talking about this legacy and history of leather, I've been here now a couple of days trying to process like what a 200-year-old company means in Smith and Zoon here. I'm looking at the timeline. The company was formed at 1821 and it has been sustained itself for over 200 years. And it really didn't click with me until I talked to the person in the facility when we were visiting earlier, who has spent 35 years there and was so enthusiastic about talking about his process of making the fat liquors for the leather industry. So that's when I understand that there is the secret magical recipe in the DNA of the company that cares about the people, cares about the products it makes, that gives them the energy about the work they do, that leads to a company life of 200 years. And it kind of correlates with leather's DNA, which has been around for thousands of years. The ancient city Pompeii giving us the oldest tannery site we know today, frozen in time like a time capsule, showing us in the middle of town, they've been processing the leathers from their meat consumption, and the same tools, same processes we use today to make leather into durable stuff, garments, and every aspect of life we use leather. That DNA proves us a living case study of a legacy of a material when we are questioning things if they're sustainable today. So what do you think about the sustainability aspect of leather from that lens?
It's a good question. I mean, when we look back historically, there were many more tanneries, and they were very often linked to our everyday life. So they were in the centers of cities, or they were close to cities. You need water to make leather. So typically, it's in regions where there is water available as well. And then you need to dry the leather. Typically, in the past, they were dried just outside in the sun. I remember that I grew up in a tannery town Mülheim an der Ruhr. It's a German city where it is in the hub of the industry heart of Germany. So we had a lot of mines, we had a lot of steel manufacturing, and in that time you needed all the leather as a protective gear. And that city has a lot of hills, and with this a lot of water coming down the hills. And then when they were able to canalize the Ruhr, the river, that is when then bigger tanneries actually established themselves at the river. So we had at the time, beginning of the 19th century, we had almost 70 tanneries in this town. And there is a German saying that the skins are washed away. And that is a tannery sentence, actually, because when overnight it was raining somewhere and the waters were rising, the skins that tanneries had put out overnight for drying were being washed away by the flood coming. So there is a lot of link as well in cities around the world, even I would say, wherever there was meat consumption, wherever there was water, there as well established tanning. But then when we look even back further, the discovery of hides being used, I mean, comes from us humans hunting. So we were already taking off the skin so that we have access to the meat, but as well the skin served a purpose. And they realized that women were chewing on the skins, and then they realized that the salive actually was conserving the skins, and then they hang them up in their tents and in the smoke of the fires, and that was really giving them the tanning process to make them durable and usable. So leather became as well a protective gear. So for clothing, but as well they were wrapped around the shoes, around the feet. So they became the first shoes, if you so want. So it's quite interesting that for as long as humanity exists almost, there has been leather around.
it's fascinating, like how it was the only material I guess they could use for clothing themselves, sheltering, protecting themselves, or even making some accessories or tools. And they figured out many ways to preserve leather because the moment they hunt an animal and eat the meat, leather is vulnerable. Like probably very early on, they realize, oh, it's going bad. You know, it's
It's
disappearing.
biodegrading,
Yeah,
yes.
just in 3 days, it
Yeah,
will be pretty much irrecoverable.
damaged.
But then they figure out, oh, I can use smoke to tan it. I can dry it. I can use the saliva. I can use maybe even the animal's own brain to tan it in different ways. So that become a very integral part of life, a necessity, a protection, and it just kept evolving. Yet, for such a long period of time, we've been using this. In no archaeological digs, we find any trash piles of leather that Earth is choking up on, whereas we see the other case for plastic materials today. So I think even we are trying to find things to present in museums, in leather museums, there's not much stuff that has been preserved. It's disintegrating itself. We have a limited glimpse of like what leather has been used into or made into in the history because of that, I think, biodegradability. So what other interesting ways humans use leather in your knowledge so far?
Yeah, as a protective gear, as I said, I mean there was as well a lot of animals involved in the mining process under earth, under the soil. So you needed all the I don't even know the technical term, but to dress the horses, and so that they could pull the stones and the coal that was taken out of the soil. That was one thing. But as well, when we look back into the time of the knights, they had a lot of leather bringing the protective gear together, holding the gear together. They had gloves made out of leather. We still see a lot of leather around today with falconers. So there's as well now remembrance, how did we hunt in the 14th or 15th century. So we used birds to hunt, and that's becoming popular again now. So there is a lot of remembrance as well, and looking into what have we done in the past that we can learn in our present day. I remember one interesting story where I was told that leather was used as a torture material in Middle Age. So leather is shrinking. If it gets wet and then you dry it in the air, it's shrinking, and they would wrap people in wet leather if you want to get a secret, because they know that the leather would shrink in the drying process and it would go to the point where it breaks your bones. So nowadays we have technologies which allow leather not to shrink anymore. So you wouldn't kill a person anymore. But it's fascinating to think about how inventive people were in a good way, but as well in a bad way.
Right. It's super interesting. But now we're going the other direction, unfortunately. Like we're consuming more animals, more meat, but then we are eliminating leather from many aspects that we could use, replacing it with plastic, cheaper, faster things. I think it's a shame that we have this resource that's completely integral to the earth and human civilization, unfortunately being abandoned and forgotten on the way. How do we address it? How do we make people remember this proven case of sustainability instead of trying to guess what other material is going to be able to sustain that long without being harmful to the earth?
Yeah, I think it's by things that we do now. Speaking to you and trying to make you self think about what are we doing in our choices, and helping educate or just going out and lecture. I lecture a lot at universities and schools, and I talk about the amazing advantages that leather brings, and I think that is really important.
Absolutely. The museums play a good role, I think, to make us remember or rethink the historical role of different things, and there's themed museums. I've been to one in Germany 20 years ago, completely random in Offenbach. It was eye-opening to me. Even until that day, I was way into leather. I was loving it. I was tanning leather in my family tannery. But the perspective it gave me, they were presenting some tents made with elephant leathers, I believe. People figures underneath, kind of representing the life, like it was used as housing almost at the time. And they were using some verses from Bible and Quran saying that, pointing people to that direction. We give you animals to eat meat and then use their skins to clothe and protect yourselves. It seems like we forgot all that. Like, is there enough resources like museums or reminders for us to be able to get this knowledge back?
Is there enough? I don't know, but there are very few. And then when I visited the one in my hometown. I was the only visitor. So it's nice to have this museum, and it's an initiative which is really on voluntary base. It was founded by the tanners who are still living in Mülheim, but now the tanning industry has completely moved out of Mülheim. So there's not one tannery left, and that's a little bit a pity. Reasons are different, but I think it is really important that we speak about leather and the advantages of leather, and that we use leather again, as our ancestors did. But of course, in a modern way of making of leather, which is much cleaner than it was in the past.
That's true. Like, because everything has been progressing towards better, more durable, more environmental practices. And I heard that there was another museum in UK. It was facing closure because of lack of visitors, lack of funding to maintain itself. And even the probably the best school in Northampton closed last year with same like lack of interest, lack of investment. So that side of the industry and material is kind of sad, I think, because of this distancing ourselves from using leather and getting the attention it deserves. Really hoping this will help some people understand and recognize and remember the importance of this material in the evolution of the human progress and go back to it.
Yeah, and I think what really is missing as well is that leather is seen as an old material. And everybody is like, what's a new? What's a new? What's a new? Rather than looking into what do we have and how can we maintain it sexy. And I think that is one of the big challenges. And I'm very concerned about that we are losing craftsmanship, that we are losing the ways how to produce it in a extremely creative way, because what's happening currently is because of people making different choices. The big tannery hubs that we have, for example, in Italy, in Tuscany, there is a lot of artisanal work. It's not only about the craft of making leather, but it's as well about the craft of refining leather and making beautiful bags, shoes, fashion items, etc., and making it absolutely unique, stunning, and amazing. As people tend to buy now industrially made and cheap products, there is not enough work to maintain those companies. So one after the other company risks to close. And when they close, we risk that this knowledge of the craftsmanship of the making of is gone and then forever. And that is something where I'm like, are we going by our striving into technologies and our striving of next, and cheaper, cheaper, cheaper? Are we going into a mainstream world where this researched and beauty and uniqueness of products is going to fall away, except for the ultra rich? I mean, we see that brands like Hermes, they are still growing, even though we are in a ditch, in a crisis now, but they are still growing double digit. And they create timeless pieces. Timeless seems to be a new luxury as well, but they are as well extremely expensive. So only a very few can afford to buy those pieces. So The question is, what are we doing to ourselves and what are we doing to our future and the future generations by our own consuming behavior to now replace an amazing product by something which is industrially produced, and where it's just the next and next and next, and we will replace it faster and faster and faster.
So we have a serious danger of losing a good portion of that legacy because of this distraction of newer, cheaper, faster, the fast fashion, the consumerism.
And you started, sorry that I step in, and you started this podcast by being touched by our colleague here from our production. He was 35 years working for the company and 25 years cleaning oil so that it becomes an oil that tannery can use. And you were seeing the passion that he had. Yeah. And now this is something that is missing. We don't have these people, or the young people are looking for other things which are cooler. So I want to become an influencer and I want to become a YouTuber, rather than putting my hands into a material and make a noble material out of it. And he is just ennobling oils so that leather can be produced out of it. But you could see the pride that he was carrying in being able that his oil that he was just producing down there is going to Italy and being used to make waterproof shoes. I mean, this is so amazing.
It's an unbelievable story and aspect of this legacy. Again, not only as material, as a profession, as a craft, there is a enormous depth, addictive side to it. He mentioned that I'm addicted, right?
Yes, absolutely.
We were
Use
talking
that
about
term,
the
yes.
smell of the oil, and he's like, I'm addicted. I can relate to it. I'm addicted because I was exposed to it when I was a kid in the tannery. Like, I was addicted to that stinky smell people may despise. But I think we kind of got a glimpse of it during COVID when we couldn't go out anywhere. We were in front of the computer, just this was work, right? Like you
That
were
was the
sitting.
world.
And we quickly realized how unsustainable this is. Like, we humans need to do something with hands, need to see a physical product come in. So many people turn to hobbies like woodworking, leather crafting. There was a plethora of brands offering, small patches of leather DIY kits for people who are trying to deal with this boredom at home. That was a huge wave. I think it's still continuing. So many people got into leather work. They did their own wallets and stuff like that. I think that was a nice, like, ironic reminder by Earth to us, like, hey, there's a cool thing you can do, even if it's not your full-time job. Just tinker with it. Like, I think Earth is joking with us, like, hey, you're forgetting something cool. This legacy, we protected it for a long time. Remember, this is a nice thing. You can not only use it, but also entertain yourself while doing something with it.
Which reminds me of an amazing guy from Pakistan. You might have met him as well at Linnea Pelle, the leather dude, who is creating games with leather for children. And he's bringing this into kindergarten and schools. And now he has first partners picking up on the idea to re-educate children about leather and the beauty of leather. And it's just amazing. So if you're a fan on Instagram or social media, look for the leather dude. It's just amazing what he's doing in the educational field and how he is helping children to rediscover leather and the beauty of. And even the game industry is now very fond in having found him, because we have all kinds of toys for children, but there was no toy made with leather ever. So it's very nice that he's now picking up on this, and he's creating very creative boxes that you can use as a kid, then even as an adult, get fun with it. It's amazing.
That's unbelievable. Like, now that's another episode I should talk to this guy. Like, I've never heard of before, but it's amazing because that's one point that keeps bothering me: the toys, the plastic. Now we go
Yeah, you have
wherever.
children.
I have children, and it's plastic trash everywhere. I wasn't aware how much plastic is created for entertaining kids, and that's when I became a fond of like wooden toys that are like much more responsible and healthy. But never thought about leather in terms of toys. Like, this is this is great. This is how we, I think, should approach to this and continue this legacy of leather. I'm definitely gonna check it out.
Yeah.
Using leather for toys is a genius idea. I have to talk to this leather dude. Probably we're gonna become friends soon. I'm assuming he
so.
loves to talk about leather, and I'm gonna go back to it for sure. And there was some other interesting ways that we come across in the ancient history of leather that was used in different ways, and probably we could still use today. Like anything else you can think
Yeah,
of?
there is. We went last year to the Milano Furniture Fair. This is a design fair, and a global design fair. I would say it's even the biggest one. There is a rumor that roughly 500,000 people travel to Milano for this trade fair. It's the biggest design fair in the world, and it's all about furniture, but as well newest trends and colors and developments. And I remember that I was visiting an old apartment. So what is amazing about this furniture fair is that when you visit Milano during that time, you have the trade fair area with 28 exhibition halls close to the airport or between the city and the airport. But then there are roughly 500 satellites, if you so want, in downtown Milano. And there is a full booklet, or even in the meanwhile, 2 or 3, that you can follow on maps, and you can see which brand has a pop-up exhibition just for this Milano design fair. And with this, you have as well access to houses, villas, apartments that typically are closed to the public. So there is, I didn't know that there is an apartment which Lombardy built for the visit of Napoleon, and that apartment is still as it was back then. And it's royal, it's unbelievable in the center of Milano. But then there are as well private apartments which are opened, which become exhibition places, and they're old. And they use, for example, leather as wallpaper. And leather is by nature the second best isolation material. So we forgot about this. So now we put 20 centimeters of plastic on our houses because we didn't find anything else. Maybe because we forgot that leather is such a great isolation material. So there are things that we can as well look back into, what are the carriers and advantages of leather that we, from a perspective as our humanity grew into technology, forgot about it.
Absolutely. I think there is a homework for the industry to rethink, like, where are we applying leather? Where can we apply, and where it has been used for before, and try to reintroduce those concepts so we don't have to create demand for other unsustainable toxic materials. But such a great concept looking back the history of leather. I think in the next episode we can talk about how leather is made into what it is, since given so many different application fields, each requires its own techniques, ways, and methodologies to make it. The process of making leather, again, there is a lot of misconceptions and unknowns around the area. I think a full episode would be nice to dive deeper. What do you think?
I look forward to it. It will be fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Volkan.